What's going on, everyone? This is the DC Incentives Podcast, and this is going to be the last episode of 2022. We're just doing recaps. There's no guests. It's just me and Nyron.
All right. For those of you who don't know, this is Nyron.
And what do you do, Nyron?
Right now, I am an EEO data analyst for the city of New York.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
That's great. So that's what you are. All right, and you're the one that asks a million questions.
I am the one that asks a million questions. I think it's important to vet our guests as much as we possibly can. You know, the more questions we ask, the more insight we offer, the more we can pull from our interviewees, and the better quality show we have.
All right, that's what's going on. All right. Um, so TC will be with us in January, y'all.
Yep,
Um,
looking forward to that.
Definitely, we will have Shadi Burrell. She will be back in January.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I know you're gonna ask her a million questions like you
I
did
mean, I
last.
thought I follow her on Instagram, so I see what she's doing. She's never really left my site, you know. Whatever it is she's up to out there in the West Coast, I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it.
Yeah. So I mean, to give a brief recap, Shadi Burrell was dropping fire on that was back in January. I remember she was talking about credit. She was talking about she was I think she gave like a list of her portfolio, and she's a motivational speaker, and we had to start off strong, at the year, and we
Hmm.
had the perfect person to do that, you know,
Right. So
and
hopefully
then
she can do that with us next year.
now she will. I know she will. And then you got what is it, Anthony Pierre, the real estate guy, which is my man dropped fire on that episode. And then I remember you was just giving him a million questions like, hold on, who's Grant Cardone, who's this? I just remember that. Yeah,
Well, real
Anthony.
estate is important. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's harder and harder to own property these days. So if there's
That's a fact.
anybody, yeah, so if there's anybody out there that has some knowledge or insight, especially for people our age and younger, it's important for us to get that information as much as we can, you know?
Yep. And then we had Pashel about mental health, which she gave us a slideshow about um about the black community, about COVID and what we need to do as far as mental health, especially for black people. So
You know, it was,
shout out to put Pashel for that.
yes, shout out to Pichelle. Or it's Pichelle. Pichelle. I always fumble her name, and that's my fault. But
Yeah.
I do remember, I remember how organized she was, and I loved her presentation because that was one of the few times I didn't have to ask any questions. She had it all laid out for us, you know.
Word. Oh yeah, you was just sitting back like this.
Yeah, that's all I needed to do. I didn't have to do anything.
That was the great, yeah. You wow, yeah, you didn't ask the million questions, yeah.
No, I did not.
So shout out to Michelle. I'm thinking about her and her husband. I gotta hit her up to see if they can do a relationship episode. Cause
Yeah,
we
we keep talking about that. February's coming up. That'll be the perfect time to do it, you know.
February, you think so?
Well, that's Valentine's Day. That's when Valentine's Day is. So whenever we have a Valentine's Day, I think it would be the best time to do something like that.
I Let me note that. Hold on. I got you.
For
Let's
our
see.
audience members, you're seeing how episodes are formulated. We just bring up people we like, we bring up topics we like, and we set an agenda. Um,
Hold on.
if
Let's
you
look.
if you like what you
Oh
hear,
no.
if you like previous podcasts and the type of people we interview, by all means reach out to us. We'll give our information at the end of the episode.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe on
All that good stuff.
on YouTube. We are on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Anchor. Yeah, so just
And give us feedback.
Radio. Yeah, huh?
And give us feedback. What I love is criticism. So if you can give us feedback on what you like, what you dislike about the podcast, what we can do better, what we can eliminate from episodes, whatever it is you find to be the most entertaining about this podcast, please communicate with us. And for the next year, we hope to produce an even better product than we already have.
Yeah, definitely, definitely is. So shout out to my man Samuel Alarape. I talk to him on a regular basis where see, I know you like that episode because you was into, you're like, well, I'm a Pan-Africanism. And
It's not Pan-Africanism. I'm a Pan-Africanist.
Okay,
IST. That's right.
Yeah, I just remember that episode. You was just like, listen, like you was asking questions, and then you was like, well, my last name, and you was just going in that episode.
Well, for those of you who missed a very riveting and informative episode, for those of us from the African diaspora, I think it's important to know where we come from. And unfortunately, Rich, we're one of the few people to really have lost that due to the slave trade. And it's that knowledge that sort of led me down the path of Pan-Africanism. Unlike religious faiths or organizations or groups, the one thing that connects us all is that we all look like we come from Africa. The Africa is on us. It's in us. It's in our skin. It's in our facial structures. So that's a great way to identify one another. But so much of that goes beyond our looks and our phenotype. And what I'm talking about essentially is culture, and that culture is something that I think needs to be rebuilt. And because we've lost so much of it due to the slave trade and due to capitalism, I think that the best thing we can do is to try to develop a movement in which we all connect one another, and our connection being back to the continent from which we came. So that's what led me to Pan Africanism, and it's great to talk to a Pan Africanist, a fellow Pan Africanist, and I could talk about it all day long, to be quite honest. But to make a long story really, really short, my favorite part about that episode is that he told me what I look like I come from. So he goes, you look like you could be Nigerian. Of course, I don't know, but it's great to know somebody who is Nigerian who can sort of say, oh yeah, you look like you could be part of us. I kind of felt connected at that point to Nigeria for a brief moment. Whether or not I'm Nigerian, who knows? But it's good to dream about.
That's definitely okay. That's definitely say about. So it's like I'm gonna drop a gem too. So I've looked at because this year we did go to the African American Museum, and what I didn't know was the word quota. When you have to reach a certain quotas, like when police officers have to reach a certain quota, traffic officers, and when people have to reach a certain quota, for their employer, so they can make their statistics or their money or something like that. That the word quota began. Maybe if I'm wrong, it began during enslavement times.
Makes sense.
So our ancestors had to reach a certain quota to pick cotton, and if they don't reach that quota in the plantation fields, then they will be disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy, right? But
I
now
think so.
looking at today, it's like when you work for the city, you have to reach a certain quota to make this money for the city.
Right.
And if you don't, then there's going to be discipline. And listen, if you go to somebody today, right, and if they tell you, yeah, we have to reach a certain quota, blah blah blah, and if you don't reach a certain quota, they mess with you. Even police officer told me that.
Well, I think, you know, I know we learned about the origin and the history of quota when we went to the African American Museum in DC.
Mm-hmm.
It all stems from capitalism for me.
There
Always
you go.
reaching a
There
certain
you go.
number,
That's
and
the
the
answer.
number always increases. The number never decreases. There's always a drive to produce more and to do more. And based on what we learned about the origins of quotas, it makes sense that it would come from that era, right? Because when you used to work from sun up to sundown out in the field, you had to reach a certain amount, or else the punishment was some act of physical violence, usually a whooping
Yep.
or a beating. You know,
Discipline. Yep.
right, right. So, what does it say that we could take a word with origins like that and inculcate that to the workforce that we have today, right? In almost any line of work, the bottom line is that you have to produce a certain amount. You have to fulfill a certain quota, and if not, then you're liable to face disciplinary action. Fortunately now the disciplinary action doesn't lead to lashes on
Physical.
your back, but
Yeah.
it does lead to lashes on your income. I'll tell you that, because you could lose your job if you don't meet those certain quotas. And I think just the demand and the hyper drive of meeting quotas is nothing more than just a reflection of the capitalist system we live in today.
There you go. See?
Hmm.
And that goes back to capitalism, right? And you're exactly right. So it's like this, right? I give the listeners another thing, right? The word landlord, tell me if I'm wrong. The word landlord, the slave master, which is of course is the person that is the owner of the lands.
Hmm.
So this is where capitalism comes into place. So our ancestors came in America to, you know, you know the deal, Nyron. I don't even gotta explain.
Listen. They came here to exploit the land, to till the
Yes,
land, to
to,
produce
to
to
produce,
produce
right?
goods like cotton,
Capitalism.
sugar,
Yes,
tobacco. The
yes,
list goes on and on.
yes. And during these times, let's say in this current time,
Hmm.
2022,
Hmm.
and in order for someone to become wealthy is not you working with your hands, is working with your mind, is how
Right.
you think, so how much resources you can have, and
Uh-huh.
then it's how many workers will work for you, so the workers can make you money. So now you're compensating. Now in this era, you're being compensated for your time to work for somebody else.
Hmm.
So they're getting more money.
Right.
Back in the day, it wasn't like that. It was
No.
free labor.
Yep. We were gone through a system known as chattel slavery. Chattel meaning
Yes.
proprietorship. We were property to other people, and
Yes.
it's why our last name is McDonald. And well, while my last name is McDonald, and it's why a lot of our last names are European, and our first names. I mean, Richard is an English name, and no offense, Rich, you don't look English.
It is.
So I
Well,
mean,
I mean, so my mother's side, Bermuda, Indian, and but so I'm, my mother's side, we from the island.
hmm.
My father's side, African, um, down south, Mississippi.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah. So I can go on and on about that, but yeah. So and
Yeah.
that's another thing when we talked about like even though it was hidden from us, it's very important. It's very important to know who you are. So
And where you come from. And I think
yeah,
it starts with Pan Africanism. And
yeah,
in connection with Pan Africanism, for our audience members and for you and I, Rich, I really hope one day we could really place a huge emphasis because of the holiday season on Kwanzaa. You know, if we could
yeah.
all, no matter what religion you come from, if you're from the African continent, if you look like you
Mhm.
come from the African continent, I think it's important for us to have at least a baseline of connectivity. Kwanzaa could be one of those things.
Yep.
The the emphasis and the push for our younger generations to learn a unifying African language. I think it's Swahili, but if we could all just learn a baseline African language, have a baseline set of traditions, I think it would connect us all, and I think it would be a huge push. I mean, there's 2 billion people that are from the continent that are African. There's 2 billion Africans, whether you were born on the continent or you're the direct descendants of sub-Saharan Africans. And if we could just all connect with one another through some sort of common ground, I think it will make a huge push in building back up the culture that was lost from us through the years of rape and oppression and slavery and so on and so forth.
Go. Yep. Absolutely. And another thing I will drop too is like when I'm watching documentaries like Hidden Colors. I'm
Hmm.
watching documentaries like 7 a.m. documentary, and I even got a chance to watch what is it, Hebrews to Negroes documentary on
Oh, that
Amazon.
The
Yeah,
Kyrie
yeah.
Irving documentary.
I got a chance to watch it.
Okay.
I even fact checked it. Yo, the author did his thing.
Really? See, I don't see the problem with
The
me
author did
is,
his thing. I ain't going. Let me drop something.
yeah, I
The
mean,
word,
be careful. Be
the
careful.
word, the word landlord.
Hmm.
The word landlord, right? It's pretty much it came from it came from, how can I say this? The word landlord came from the slave master who owns the land. And the person that owns the land, they call him landlord.
Uh-huh.
And the landlord has property in his plantations, in his field, and he has houses.
Right.
And then our ancestors that was in his property, right?
Hmm.
Is when we're in his property, is we're in houses. Yes, it's multiple people,
Right.
not in his house because he has a mansion. He has like three small houses, right?
Hmm.
Let's say if the slave master has three houses connected.
Right.
Those three houses, it's connected to like, I would say, six people, and
Okay.
they call them tenants.
Right. I mean, it's the system. It's the system we have today. So,
So that goes back to real estate, right?
okay.
Landlord, um, and then the landlord says, "Oh, this is my tenant.
Hmm.
He lives here. He's a renter. He pays me every month, to sleep here, and I make money I make money while he
Right.
sleeps here.
Right.
Crazy, right?
Well, not really. Again, it's us. I mean, even the term landlord, it's antiquated, but again, it all stems from a capitalist notion of ownership and production, right?
Yep.
So, all right.
Your girl Laquania,
One of my favorite podcasters of the year, for sure, because of her knowledge.
favorite
Absolutely.
podcast of the
I said,
year.
well, I said one of.
Okay. All right. So one of. What about my man Charles? Mr. Financial Literacy.
You know what? What I loved about Charles is that his reputation preceded him. From LaQuanya to everybody else who interviewed before Charles, all of them referenced Big Daddy Charles. And it was great. It was great to sit down and talk to him about finance and financial literacy. And I enjoyed that conversation for sure.
All right. Now, what about Ifa Abeyo?
Ifa Abel, remind me.
She's the spiritual. She's the spirit.
Yes. Yeah. Right. She was talking about Oshun, and she gave us the whole history of Oshun. Beautiful soul, beautiful spirit. I loved hearing her laugh. She had a great laugh, and it was just a pleasurable time. Listen, I can't remember a bad podcast that we've had this year, like a bad negative experience with anybody that we've interviewed.
Okay. All right. My man Clyde Slade.
Clyde Slade, a personal favorite of yours, Rich, has been on multiple episodes. The man was dropping gems. As you like to say, he gave us talks on sports betting, dieting. He gave us tips on investing in stocks. I debate with everybody, not everybody, but I I debate with people that I who I try to understand, people who have different opinions from me, because unlike you and this stone, I like to think of myself as fluid. I like to think of myself as somebody that is open to having his mind changed and who loves discourse and who loves to have intellectual battles. So it was great interviewing Clyde Slade. I hope to see him again in 2023 and interview with him again in 2023. Nothing but good things for Clyde.
Okay, what about vague benefits of fasting and wet cupping?
Oh man, Mr. Haya, my man with the karate. I remember him. It was great hearing his story. It was great discussing a lot of the benefits of fasting, alternative medicines, and cupping. Without him, I don't think I would have. I know for a fact I wouldn't have even looked up what cupping was or discussing any of the benefits of cupping. I think it was a great guest. Love to have him back on and pick his brain about a lot of things.
Gotcha. Our Casey Doll, life insurance. I gotta bring her back to talk about IULs, but
IULs.
Yes.
It was great to talk about how you could use your life insurance as a bank. I didn't know that was a possibility. I love her youthful energy. I love how enthused she was to be on the podcast. She gave us a huge breakdown on the significance of life insurance, and I think she is just the beginning of the exploration of the avenues of life insurance. So I thank her for opening up the doors for us in terms of life insurance and informing our audience about it. And hopefully she's the first guest of many that'll help us explore what life insurance is all about and how to use it to our benefit.
All right, our most popular episode of all time of the year.
I know what you're talking about.
And Glad Credit, Vladimir.
Fun fact about Glad. So we grew up in the same neighborhood, and I'm a few years older than Glad. But I remember him from when he was a kid. And when we first interviewed him, I recognized his face, but I didn't necessarily know if he recognized mine. And I didn't know that was the person we were going to be interviewing that day. So when he was like, "Oh, wait, I remember you from such and such," it was great because the last time I saw him, he was a teenager. And I've always been a pretty tall guy. But he was definitely smaller and younger than me back then. So to see him all growing up as an adult and we're looking eye to eye, it was great. And to see what he's become, getting his nursing degree, finding out about credit, influencing people on a social level. No, that's not the right way to say it. Using social media to inform people about the best ways to take advantage of credit and use it to your benefit. I think It was a great interview, great guest. I mean, he's the reason why we even got to the bag event. Um, I'm just so proud of who he became, and I hope we have him on again soon.
Yeah, nah, we definitely gonna have him. I'm gonna see if I could book him for June. To definitely talk about credit again. Yeah,
All right.
he is our most popular slash he because of his episode, he has the most popular episode of the year.
Yeah, no, I didn't know he was that big. Where how many people? I don't remember how many people viewed, but it was definitely more than we've ever seen.
It
And
was
I'm just,
more than any other view we ever seen. Yes.
I would love to take credit and think it was all me, but for sure, if not, it was definitely all Glad. I mean, the guy is just class personified, right? Dressed to the nines, knows about his stuff, and of course, we would vet him thoroughly to make sure he knows about his stuff because there was no question he couldn't answer. There was no example he couldn't explain in detail for even the layman out there to understand how to use credit to their benefit. So shout out to Glad if you're watching this episode. Um, Whenever you want to play ball, we could play ball, and never forget that I'm better than you on the court. That's all I'm gonna say.
Our Vanessa and phonetic wisdom.
Phonetic Wisdom is a personal favorite guest of mine only because you know she challenges me in a lot of levels. And she
Vanessa.
doesn't back. Yeah, yeah. No, Phonetic Wisdom.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't talking about Vanessa. I mean, it was great interviewing Vanessa too. And what I enjoyed about talking, what I enjoyed about well, what I enjoyed about Vanessa was her ability to describe what led her down the path of veganism. I followed her channel since, and she was able to share with us, well, with me personally, because at the end of the interview, what I wanted to know most about was the literature that led her down the path to veganism. And she was gracious enough to share that information with me. And subsequent to interviewing her, as I said before, I followed her on Instagram, and she's doing a lot of great positive work, all about inner healing and veganism and taking fellow entrepreneurs down a path of becoming better versions of themselves. She's a good spirit.
Oh,
But back to
that Philly cheesesteak though.
I I will never not. I just had a Philly cheese for breakfast this morning. You know, so that's not that's not going away anytime soon. It was just great to hear her side of the story. And back to Phonetic Wisdom. What I love about Phonetic Wisdom is that she seems ethereal, right? She seems sort of like a spirit where she's just walking around giving great insight, organizing beautiful events for beautiful Black faces and beautiful Black people, and never backs down from the jokes that I make. Never backs down from any of the comments that I make. So it's great to have that banter with guests when we do talk with them. And I hope to see her again soon in 2023. I really enjoyed having her on. One of my favorite guests, if not my definitely top three. She's definitely top three.
Who's top number one again?
Oh, ooh, see,
Laquanya, right?
I was afraid you say that. Honestly, believe it or not, it might not be. If I had to think about who my absolute favorite guest was that me personally, we interviewed this year, for now, I think it would have to be the Pan African guy. It might have to be
Why?
him
Why?
because Pan Africanism is something near and dear to my heart, and it's great to discuss Pan Africanism with anyone, let
But
alone.
well, I mean, he did. What other gem? I think he said about what is it, Nigeria? I forgot what it was, but it was a whole gem. I think it was about Nigeria. He said about um who ruled it or something like that. I forgot. I gotta go back.
It's all right. It's all right.
Um Sabine. I'm gonna be honest with you. I pat myself in the back
For Sabine,
because Sabine like Sabine is like she's known, she's very popular, and it was hard. I know Sabine is hard to get someone on the show. I pat
Right.
myself on the back to have Sabine on the DC Incentives podcast.
As you should. For our audience members out there, Diamond Cash does so much work to make sure this podcast runs. You know, he's our cameraman. He is our he's our
Well,
camera.
Xavier is our cameraman. Yeah.
Well, you know, HR is our camera. But what I'm saying is, your hands are in so many pots to make this podcast go. You know, you're responsible for me being on this podcast. Your name is on this podcast for a reason. You know, you're the person that books most of the guests. You're the person that helps facilitate things. I'm just very grateful to have met you and to for having you allow me to be on the podcast in the first place. I can't thank you enough for that.
Well, I thank you for asking your questions and being yourself.
No problem.
Nah,
No problem.
because it's I got audience members that saying that Nyron, they tell me this. Nyron asks questions that makes you think.
I mean, if you're
That's
not asking questions to make you think, then you're not asking. There's no reason to ask questions. You know.
no, but I'm saying you ask a question and then I can tell the guests be like they pause and then they respond.
That's good.
Usually a guest would be like if you ask them a question, they'll just respond. You, on the other hand, when you ask a question, they'd be like,
What does this mean? How do I answer this sufficiently? You
yeah.
know. Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. You know, if you're Sabine and you're coming on the podcast and you want to talk about wills and trusts, you got to know your stuff backwards and forwards, or else you're going to get stuck. The same thing with Glad. One of the reasons why I appreciated Glad when we interviewed him is because I know very little about credit and how to use credit to my advantage. So if Glad didn't know everything he knew about credit and how to use it sufficiently, he would have been stuck and he would have been, you know, displayed to the rest of the world as some sort of fraud on the podcast. But because he knows his stuff and because he knows his work, I'm sure he's helped me and a lot of other people. You know, that's the whole point of asking questions. You to have a better understanding of who the person is and what they're all about and what they can bring to the table.
There you go. And Handsome Kelly that we recently interviewed.
I like Handsome Kelly. I like his story. I like the fact that he's from here. Um, I like the plans he has for the future. I love the fact that he's able to. I mean, he was able to give us, you know, all behind the scenes anyway, like some decent advice on how to look at stocks in the market. And I love the fact that he's doing all this married. You know, he's young, black, and married, and he has a goal for travel and to establish a better life for him and his significant other through trade. And it was informative, it was enlightening, it was a pleasure to have him on.
Lamont, your opinion doesn't matter game. Do you enjoy that game? Because I know you did had a critique, you said.
Yeah. I love the concept and I even love playing it. I don't necessarily remember the critique I had back then, but a critique I definitely have right now is that if some of the guest members aren't necessarily familiar with the topic, for example, the sports question, I was the only one that was able to answer about who is going to be the next future star to look at because you know you're not that into sports and neither is Troy. So I guess one of the critiques I would have is to just make sure that the topics at hand are topics that everybody can be a part of. And for now, that's about it. I can't wait to play it again.
I want to no continue because I was about
No,
to
no,
ask you
no.
about it.
Yeah, no, I
So,
can't wait to play it again and have a better idea of how to play the game.
do you think because of society and how some people are sensitive to like some people are sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that it's for everybody in society or no?
Well, there are very few things that are for everyone in society. I think you have to play this game. If you're a sensitive person, it's best to play with close friends and family, people that are sensitive to what makes you tick, that knows the things that offend you easily.
Yep.
Fortunately, I have a pretty strong backbone, as you can tell, and
We all
there,
do.
there,
Everybody in
there,
this podcast, we all do.
yeah, there are very few things that would offend me. You have to have some thick skin if you're playing with me or for any one of us in the DC Incentives podcast. And I think for a lot of people in general, the world is very PC, um, as it should be. And I think the world is waking up to the needs and the sensitivities of everyone. And with that comes a level of decorum that you have to develop over time to make sure that you don't step on anybody's toes. Unfortunately, this game isn't a facilitator of that. This game just allows you to speak your mind and say what you will. Other feelings be damned. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your belief is on certain subjects. The game will test you on all of it. And if you're not prepared to take that test, then you're going to find yourself in a position where you could be easily triggered.
I mean, it does also, what I like about the game is it does also make you see another point of view.
Yes, it does. It for sure. So, like, it forced what I love most about the game. My favorite part about the game is the aspect of the game where you have to be for or against, and it doesn't matter whether you really believed in the statement or not. You have to find a way to defend it. And in that position, you're forced, if you want to do a good job anyway, you're forced to look at things from another point of view. And I think that's the only way we could really understand one another is if we can understand the perspective of the other person from where they stand, from where they stand. Sorry. So yeah, it was great interviewing with Lamont. I enjoy his game. I hope he becomes a billionaire from it. I hope he makes tons of money from it and just toss a couple million our way because we help promote the stuff. That's all I ask. We're all poor out here. We don't want to be poor forever.
All right. So, what to expect for 2023?
A better quality show, honestly.
Talk to me.
I think if you're not improving your podcast, then you're not growing. I think
I see
that,
this.
that
Yeah, it has been improved, but go ahead.
I think that I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but that channel of the guy that critiqued us, you know who I'm talking about? The one you shared?
Yeah, I know you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, for our audience members, there was a podcaster whose job it was to look at podcasts that are up and coming
Yeah.
and critique us. And I thought that was very healthy, the good and the bad. When you're doing podcasts, you don't really get a lot of feedback. Well, at least I don't because I'm not really pulling any strings behind the scenes. So it's great to know what could be done better. And I hope we take some of that advice and we employ it in a productive way in the future.
Yeah, it will be. It's a lot of things that needs to be done. So I would say that it is going to be guests and it is going to be more of it's not going to be the same like the every year it keeps growing. So
Yeah. And for those of you who have been with this podcast from the very beginning, I hope you've seen its growth. I hope you give us feedback as we continue to produce guests from all over the place, from comedians to expert cuppers to people to talk about wills and veganism. just give us as much feedback as you can, and I hope that you will continue to be entertained and informed by all of us here at the DC Consensus Podcast. So that's one thing to expect for 2023.
Okay, so who do you like to see and what topic?
I'd like to see Barack Obama. I'd love to see Louis Farrakhan. I'd love to see Lauryn Hill up close and personal. um, but realistically, I'd love to talk to more people about Africanism or Pan Africanism for sure. I'd love to have more guests on to talk about real estate, only because I have a personal vested interest in it, as all of us should. I think we should all get to a space where our goal is to own something, and if there are people out there that can help facilitate that, it's important that we reach out to them and pick their brains. I would love to talk more about literature, to be quite honest. I think one of the things we don't really talk about as a people is Black authors and Black literature. For example, I have a Kindle, and for our audience members that follow the podcast, you know how much I love my Kindle. I keep talking about how it's one of the best investments I've ever made because it's my
Yes,
personal library. You know what I mean?
I be wanting to throw it when I see you.
I take it with me everywhere, right?
Still want to throw it.
and I went on YouTube. I went on YouTube the other day, and I typed in Black authors Kindle Unlimited. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, sadly, there's only about 2 or 3 Black channel creators talking about Black authors. And every single one of them were women, which isn't a problem. But every single one of those women were talking about female authors, which again isn't a problem. The problem is all of the female authors were creating romance novels. The Preacher took my man, from thug to billionaire. What was one? There was one Black author who had the craziest book cover title. It was something along the lines of like, I'm the preacher's side chick and I'm proud of it. It was like some of the most negative, stereotypical literature you could find, right? And my problem in the Black literature space is that outside of the classics like the Langston Hughes and the James Baldwins and the Zora Neale Hurstons of the world, who are brilliant authors, it's always confined to talking about race. And I understand because that's the time period of which they come from. And I even understand the need to have a niche of Black authors that have those, what I call them, ghetto fabulous books, right? There's a space for that. My problem is those seem to be the only 2 avenues that I find, right? Where's the Black authors that'll talk about, I don't know, what it's like to work in a corporate office? You know what I mean? Where's the Black author that'll talk about, financial literacy and financial freedom? We're more than just these ghetto fabulous characters and the defenders of our race. We are so diverse, and I don't find that when I read these Kindle books or when I try to find them on YouTube, authors to talk about that. So if we can find Black authors that are beyond those 2 categories that I mentioned, and just interview them and pick their brain and talk about what inspired them to create the works that they do and how to find different Black authors in different genres, I think it would be beneficial to us as podcasters and to our listeners, right? So if we can have that on the podcast, I think that would be great.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie. I think I want to have a big name on this show.
Well, you have me. I don't understand. I don't understand. Am I not a big name? Am I not a big name? Are you not entertained every time I'm on the podcast?
I mean, the most entertaining was honestly speaking, the most funniest entertaining was LaQuanya.
You know what? You know why? Because when we talk about characters having thick skin, hold on one second.
So when Myron was like, how can I show me how to be financially literate. Show me how to be that. And she said, I got to look at it back, but she was like, oh, when and you, what she said, get your coins up, sir, and then
I'm back. I'm sorry.
She was like, get your coins up, sir, and then buy two because I got two kids, something like that, or whatever.
Well, you know what made LaQuanya such a fantastic.
We was rolling.
Well, what made LaQuanya such a fantastic guest, going back to the ability to have thick skin, is that she knew it was all a joke, right? She never took any of it personally. And she played along. You know, she played along, and when you play along, it makes for a great, fantastic show, right? It makes for a lot of entertainment, and not only was she funny, she was informative. So, you kill two birds with one stone, and that's all you can really ask for. That's all I can really bring to the table. I can bring you some information, and I can make you laugh. That's all I can do.
Let's go.
None of the podcasters, I hope, none of the people we've ever interviewed took anything personally or were offended by any of the things we've said. Our goal is to never offend anybody, just to produce funny, informative content.
Absolutely. Entertaining too, All right, is there anything else before we move on? We're almost to the ending of the ending.
LaQuanya, call me. That's number one, first and foremost. And
I'm telling you the woman that you're seeing.
we don't have to put that out there for any of the ladies listening. Rich, you just killed any chance.
Go ahead.
Right? No.
He says LaQuanya, call him. So what is your number to all the women that has a crush on you? What is it? 816?
816-212-1234, No, just real quick, people that I would love to interview. One of them is the woman that was the founder for Slutty Vegan. She just opened one up here in Brooklyn, New York, and I would love to pick her brain about what inspired her to make it. How did she get her staff to be so rambunctious? I've been trying too. I've been sending out emails and calling. I figured if we could just get out and try to email, phone call, something. Just try. We'll see how it goes. But if I would consider next year successful, if we could interview her of all the people.
Really?
And really? Farrakhan. If we could get Louis Farrakhan. Remember when we interviewed that lawyer last year?
He said names that is almost impossible. But
I already mentioned Lauryn Hill and Beyonce. I named the big names, but these are big names that I think if we really try hard, I mean, if we could get Sabine, I think that's a great step in giving us confidence to try to reach out to people of her ilk. And I think founders of Slutty Vegan and Louis Farrakhan, who is a controversial figure for some, but has also done a lot of good through the Nation of Islam and a lot of good for African Americans. He really has been somebody that we could look to for support in the Black community. And those figures are far and few in between outside of the athletic circles and the entertainment circles. He was a civil rights activist. He is a civil rights activist. He is the face of a nation of people that emphasize Black pride and Black unity. And just those two principles alone make him very important to me, anyway. And Umar Johnson on the list of people I would love to interview. I would love to interview Umar Johnson, and then I would also love for him to take a look at the lovely young woman that I am seeing, because he can't criticize me at all about trying to date anybody that is quote unquote not of the African. She is African, African, African. She's really dark. Really, really, really dark. I think Umar Johnson would take a look at her and give me a high five, and I would appreciate that very much.
We don't.
Not to say that I would not to say that I wouldn't date any other races. Not to say that I haven't before, that I won't in the future. I'm just saying the person that I'm seeing now, I think Umar Johnson would really approve of.
We don't discriminate on this podcast, but okay.
Never, ever, 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 ever.
Okay.
Despite what Richard says about Semitism and Shemitic.
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 Shemitic. Yes. Semitic. No, the real yes. So yes. So is there anything before the end of the year, before we get to January?
Well, I'm not big on manifestations usually, but I want to talk about some things I want to manifest for next year.
Okay.
An increase in my income, whether that is through the podcast or through finding a job that pays higher. Not that I don't love my job. I love what I do at the EPC. I love working for the city. I know that what I do is very important, but always having more money helps. I want to manifest finding property of my own. That's one of the goals I have for next year. I definitely want to own some property. I want this podcast to be monetarily successful, which means that next year I want us to interview, a wide array of guests that cause our audience members to want to like and share and just consume more of us. I want to finally be fluent in Spanish, lose the 50 pounds I've been saying I needed to lose forever, and read more books. Read more books, because I love this Kindle. It's allowed me to read as much as I need to, as much as I want, and I just want to keep that going. So,
yeah. All right. Well, there you go. There you have it. And yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year,
everyone. I'll see you in January, everyone.
Okay.
Yes. Peace out.
We're out.